Hello, I'm Jack Smalley. I'm the Director of HR Learning and Development for Express Employment Professionals International Headquarters in Oklahoma City. Today we're going to talk about avoiding the top 5 leadership mistakes, or what I like to call how to walk the leadership talk. And I want to say up front, I have personally made all these mistakes. But fortunately for leaders, we're not defined by our mistakes. We are defined by who we are after a mistake. Great leaders, as we know, can move men, women, and even mountains, but they can also do irreparable damage to our followers from our mistakes. The higher the level we achieve in an organization, the greater the damage from our mistakes as well. And at the end of the day, we all know that it's our employees who choose. They choose to support us to success as the leader, or they choose to stand back and allow us to fail. Our success is in the hands of our employees when it comes to leadership. Let's start with leadership mistake number 1, assuming your best employees require little recognition. And here's how I want to frame this. Who is the most important person in your life? Think about that. Well, most of us would say it is our spouse or our significant other. Well, how many times has your spouse or significant other said, "You don't tell me you love me anymore"? And what do we say? "I told you on our wedding day. And if that ever changes, I'll let you know." We have all had a leader in our career that said, "If I'm not talking to you, everything is fine. It's when I'm talking to you that there's problems." That is not leadership. Employees, especially your best, deserve affirmation of good performance. And best practice is not an annual performance appraisal, but a specific, regular feedback. In fact, the very best performance appraisal you'll ever see is actually a very boring document. Why? Because it should have no surprises in it. It should be just a mere reflection of conversations you've already had during the year with the individual. You should be giving performance feedback each and every day, where that performance appraisal is a reflection of those days. Affirmation of good performance motivates. Employees, as we know, thrive on praise. Let me give you an example. If you pick up the phone tonight at 8 o'clock and call one of your best employees at home, when they hear your voice on the other end of the phone, what are they going to say? That's correct. They're going to say, "What's wrong?" Because we make a lot of "what's wrong" calls. I challenge every one of you within the next month to make what I call as a "what's right" call. I want you to call one of your best employees at 8 o'clock at night at home. And when they hear your voice and say "what's wrong," I want you to say, "No, I'm calling because of what's right." And then you're going to say, "I just had dinner with my family, and in the process of dinner we talked about my day. And I told them what you did today," which is something specific. It's got to be based on a specific event. And then you say, "Not only did you make my day, you made my evening. And I'm calling you again just to thank you one more time, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow." They will remember that phone call for years to come. I've had one "what's right" call in my career. This is a former employer, and it happened on Thanksgiving Day many years ago. We were having our Thanksgiving dinner with our family, and it was my boss. And he said, "Jack, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I know you're having Thanksgiving, but we have a crisis in Canada I need your help with." And I said, "Sure, whatever I need to do. Do I need to go up there next week, the week after?" He said, "Jack, I'm sorry, I need you to leave now." Within 2 hours, I was on a plane to Canada, and I was there 6 months. It's a very complicated issue, but it worked out well, and we were very fortunate. Went back into my job 6 months later, and my phone rang at work. I did as I always do. I answered the call, "Jack Smalley." And the caller on the other end said, "Jack, this is the CEO of Mobil Oil," my employer at the time. He said, "I just heard what you did in Canada, and it's people like you who make our organization what it is today, and I wanted to personally thank you." In fact, at first I thought it was a prank call. I thought it was one of my friends. And then I realized it really was the CEO of the company. And I will never forget that phone call the rest of my career. The bottom line on praise, praise for all deserving, especially your best. Every Gallup survey I've ever looked at said praise and recognition is the #1 factor on why employees stay in a job or choose to look for another job. Money is like number 4 or 5 or 6. We all seek recognition. And then mean it. Be specific on the recognition. Make a huge deal about it. And do it often for your best employees. The second leadership mistake is accepting mediocre performance, or what I call our C-level employees. Every organization has 3 levels of employees. We have A's, we have B's, and C's. About 20% of our employees are A's. They're the ones who constantly move the organization forward, and they're the ones that we go to over and over and over when we need something done efficiently, timely, and it's critical. We have about 30% B employees. B's, like A's, also move the organization forward. The only difference between the B's and the A's is the A's may have more promotability through succession planning. But unfortunately, we have about 50% C's. C's meet minimal expectations and do not move the organization forward. What do? We lower our standards to accommodate the C's. And when there's something we need done, we constantly go back to the A's and B's and have them do it. So what are we doing? We're rewarding the C's with less work and punishing the A's and B's with more work. Lowering the bar to accommodate the non-performers or the C's is not the answer. Asking the best associates to do more is not the answer. Because here's what happens. Sooner or later, one of your A's, that 20% of your best, will come to you and offer their 2 weeks resignation. And they'll catch you off guard. And you'll say things like, "What happened? You've been with us for 10 years. And they'll make the comment, "Well, I've got this other opportunity. It's a chance of a lifetime. And if I don't take it now, I'll never see it again. And it pays 20% more and it's 2 levels higher in authority." And what do? We say, "We don't have that opportunity right now. All I can do is wish you the greatest of success. And if that ever changes, you're always welcome to come back." That was a waste of time, as much as I hate to tell you. We shouldn't be concerned how much they're making, what level of a job they're going to. We should be concerned what was the trigger that prompted them after 10 years to start looking for other opportunities. And that trigger, the majority of the time, is we're not managing our C's. So we're not sure who the C's are. I promise you, your A's and B's know who they are. So we need to manage our C performers. And how do we do that? Establish clear accountability. In some cases, you'll even have a performance improvement plan, or what we call short-term objectives. Give them an action plan where they need to be in a specific amount of time. What we need to do is to raise the bar, because we keep lowering the bar to accommodate the C's when we should be raising the bar to honor the A's and B's. And then I hope I never hear this from any of you, because so many times we hear, "Can you have a bad attitude but still be a good worker?" And the answer is no. There's no such thing as a good worker with a bad attitude. If they've got a bad attitude, they are lowering your productivity through your other employees. We must address the C's and hold them accountable as a way to honor the A's and B's. The third leadership mistake is dictatorship decision-making by stifling maverick thinkers. We've all heard of the dictatorship decision-maker leaders, and they collaborate as long as you agree, meaning they want your opinion as long as they agree with your opinion. But the first time they don't agree with your opinion, they no longer ask you anymore. The number one insecurity of ineffective leaders today is they view talented subordinates as threatening. Thus, they then restrict their knowledge. Knowledge in an organization equals power. The more knowledge we can empower our employees with, the greater the organization. And that's why we also must support generational differences among our employees. The best companies to work for in America attract all 4 generations in the workplace, not just 1 or 2 generations. I have a must-read book for you. It's called A Peacock in the Land of Penguins. Now, I want you to think about a flock of penguins. They all look identical. Where you see one, you see thousands. Where one goes, they all go, because that's what penguins do. If a peacock was in a flock of penguins, they would stick out, and in most cases, they may not even be welcome. We in organizations, we must embrace the peacocks. We must look beyond the penguins and look at diversity and what we can do by bringing in other talented individuals who are different than we are. People who think differently than we do, who can add value coming from another direction. And those are peacocks. Great leaders embrace maverick thinkers. Think of Henry Ford, who dared to be different. Think of Sam Walton, who wanted to put a whole city under one roof. And then there was Rosa Parks, who said, "I'm not giving up my seat on the bus." And we can never forget Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said we can all get along even though we're so different in so many ways. And then we have Robert Funk and William Stoller, the founders of Express, our company, who dared to be different by saying you can take a staffing company into a franchise organization. And in 30 years, they built one of the largest staffing companies in North America, and also one of the most successful. The fourth leadership mistake is poor communication, or what I call the leadership death penalty. So let's talk about some top leadership communication mistakes. Have you heard this one before? This will be off the record. Well, when it comes to leadership, everything is on the record. There's nothing off the record. If an employee tells you something, then they say it's off the record, they still want you to know for a reason. So we have to assume everything we hear that we deal with is on the record. Another communication mistake is assuming your employees know what's going on. Well, let me tell you, some of your employees do know what's going on. Others don't. If you want to make an assumption, assume that nobody knows what's going on and tell every employee everything. Another communication mistake is spinning the message. The days of it always has to be positive are over. Employees today demand honesty, and quit trying to spin it. Sometimes honesty is bad news. And I've learned, like you've learned, employees can handle bad news under two circumstances. Number one, that the bad news is honest. And number two, that the messenger of the bad news has integrity. Because many companies struggle, they have a good message, but they use the wrong messenger. The messenger is as important as the message. Honesty has to rule today under all circumstances. Another communication mistake is criticizing employees in front of other employees. You'd be surprised how often this still happens. It's like focusing on the past versus focusing on the present. In fact, leaders will come across as a bully if they're caught doing that, and it also jeopardizes their integrity. The fifth communication mistake is the leader who talks too much. We all know them, the ones who think that they're a walking thesaurus. It's all about them. They want to go first. They want to go last. They hog the clock. They're constantly interrupting. They're only interested in what they have to say and not interested in what others have to say. How about this one? Unsolicited advice. The dumbest question I've ever heard as an employee or a leader is, do you mind if I give you some advice? Because we always say 100% of the time, no, please do. But we always think 100% of the time, I'd really rather you not. So don't ask to give advice. If you have to give it, then give it. Because the leaders who do that so often, it's like a ready, shoot, aim approach. They don't plan their communication. They just throw it out there. And they come across as a professional know-it-all, or as we know, the expert on everything. Keep advice to a minimum. And then the most critical, the top communication mistake of all time is lying, what I call the leadership death penalty. You tell a knowing untruth, you have lost your integrity forever. Never allow yourself to be in the situation where you have to tell an untruth. And there's no such thing as partial truths, because you will lose the trust forever from your employees and you will damage your integrity forever. If you have to, silence rules over lies, or say, I'm just not at liberty to discuss that. But never put yourself in a situation knowingly to tell an employee an untruth. The fifth leadership mistake, the one I think is the most critical to us, is the failure to mentor. Mentoring is so important today, and we're losing our great mentors, the baby boomer generation, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. But let's back up and talk about the origin of the word mentor. Where did it come from? It came from the Greek mythology during the Odyssey, where Ulysses chose mentor to look after his family while he went away on the Odyssey. Mentors are ordinary people achieving extraordinary success by helping others. Most successful mentoring is the unofficial programs. We have great official programs where we align the right mentor up to the employee, but it's the unofficial programs where relationships just are created, because for mentoring to be successful, the mentor must see it as an opportunity, not as an assignment. The person doing the mentoring must want to be in that relationship, and especially the individual being mentored must want to be mentored by that individual. And that's why I think the unofficial programs are the most successful. Now, we're at a crossroads in mentoring. And like I said, it's because of the great baby boomer exit. So why are baby boomers probably the best generation of mentors? Because they were cradle-to-grave employees working for cradle-to-grave companies. Almost every baby boomer can tell you a story how they worked for one company for 15 to 20 years. And when you work for one employer that long, relationships are built. You take people under your wing. But the baby boomers are beginning to leave. Millennials, who are soon to be the most populated generation in America, will stay in a job for probably 3 to 5 years at most, by their choice, because they embrace change. They like change of changing jobs. So the opportunity of establishing a mentoring relationship is going to be much less, because of the cradle-to-grave mentality is no longer there. Programs are needed to retain talented millennials while embracing the organization's culture. We must have programs in place to keep the millennials engaged and to get them involved in the culture of the organization. Mentoring must expand beyond boss-subordinate relationships. Many mentors are lifelong mentors. You don't have to necessarily work with the individual, but you stay in contact with them. I still have many mentors in my life that I rely on almost constantly from time to time. Let's talk about the characteristics of an effective workplace mentor. Remember, I said you've got to view it as an opportunity, not as an assignment. It's about wanting to be in that role. You've got to be sensitive to the cultural diverse backgrounds of the people that you're mentoring, and willing to share constructive criticism and feedback in a supportive, sensitive, and patient manner. Again, it's about helping people, guiding people, more than it's about managing people. Mentoring is about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge can be learned, but wisdom can only be acquired and passed. Knowledge can be read in books, but you will read no books that will tell you about wisdom and how to handle every situation. That comes from one individual who's been there. Knowledge is having the right words, where wisdom's knowing when and how to say those words, and believe it or not, when to even keep your mouth shut. Based on a University of Miami study recently, employees who were mentored in organizations earn more money, they're better socialized in the organization, they agree with the culture and fit into the culture of the organization, they're more productive, they experience much less stress than people who are not mentored, and yes, they get promoted earlier. Great leaders welcome mentoring from subordinates. That's right. Mentoring is not all mentoring down. Mentoring is also mentoring up. Some of the best leaders you'll ever meet will tell you some of their most effective mentors were their subordinates. What do? They keep the bosses out of management land. They bring them down to reality and say, you need to know this, you need to do this. It's about embracing your subordinates to allow them to mentor up. Let subordinates know when they inspire us and when they direct you back into reality. Mentoring begins at parenting and continues throughout life. When I wrote this seminar, I was thinking of who the most effective mentors were in my life. And the longer I thought, the further back that I went. And I went as far back as my grandfather. My grandfather got his leadership experience in the church. He was a church leader. And I remember him telling me numerous times, he said, Jack, find something in life you enjoy. He said, you choose what it is, whether it's school, education, a job, a hobby, a sport. He said, you pick it. But when you pick it, he said, get great at it. He said, you want to go through life knowing that you're great at least at one thing. My father got his leadership experience as a fire chief. He was a fire chief for more than 20 years. And I remember my father always saying, never ask anybody to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. I have pictures of my father standing on the roof of a burning home with the flames all around him. I remember saying to my dad, Dad, you were the fire chief. Shouldn't you have been at the fire truck leading your firemen through the fire, being the supervisor? And he said, no. He said, you're wrong. He said, by the time we had a fire, I couldn't teach them anything else. My job during a fire was to help them fight the fire. He said, I was much more effective in that role. They didn't need a leader during a fire. They needed somebody to help them. My dad, I'm proud to say, was also my best friend growing up in life. And then I want to tell you the story of Sammy Duggar. My desire in life as a child, as a 12-year-old child, I only wanted one thing, and that was to be the quarterback on the high school football team. But there were three things wrong with me. I was too slow, I was too small, and I couldn't throw. Other than that, I tell people I was pretty good. But I wanted to be a quarterback. The quarterback on my little high school football team that year, remember I was a 12-year-old, his name was Sammy Duggar. He was an all-state quarterback on a state championship football team. Sammy Duggar was like 5'7", about 135 pounds, and he was an all-state quarterback. And he was my hero. Every Saturday morning during football season, I was knocking on Sammy Duggar's door at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now what 17, 18-year-old boys are going to get up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning after they're black and bruised from a Friday night football game to come outside to hang out with a 12-year-old who's not even a relative? Well, Sammy Duggar not once refused to come outside with me on those Saturday mornings. He would teach me how to take snaps and throw, and he went over the playbook. I knew every play our high school football team ran, and I knew the quarterback's moves on every play as a 12-year-old. And Sammy Duggar's unselfishness taught me that. Well, my junior year, I was named the starting quarterback on the high school football team. Now, Sammy Duggar had graduated a long time before that. He had already graduated from college, and he was a pharmacist in Dallas, Texas. He drove 7 hours to my first football game. And when I was introduced as the starting quarterback and I looked up in the stands at my parents, sitting between my parents was Sammy Duggar. And I remember seeing him because I hadn't seen him in 7 or 8 years and what it meant to me. When I wrote this seminar, I wanted to find Sammy Duggar. It had been over 40 years since I had seen him. And my wife and I found him in Dallas in a nursing home. And we drove to Dallas and spent the afternoon with Sammy and his wife. And you know what we did? We relived those Saturday mornings. In fact, Sammy remembered more detail about those Saturday mornings than I did. And I told him that I was there to thank him for being a mentor. And what it meant to me, and part of me achieving my dream, was because of what he taught me on those Saturday mornings. Mentors help create and enhance your leadership style. It's the most important thing that they can offer you. In fact, looking back at my career, I was very fortunate to have numerous great mentors who taught me various things. I remember my first boss right out of college who taught me relationships first, and I'll never forget it. He said, Jack, when you start a new job, whether it's a new job with the same company or a new job with a different organization, it makes no difference. He said the first 2 weeks of that new job do absolutely nothing but build relationships. Relationships with your subordinates, with your boss, your peers, and even the community. He said, because relationships lead to trust. If your employees feel connected to you, there's a much greater chance that they trust you. And only if they trust you, then will they share information with you. And it's information that leads to success. I remember him saying there's not a leader on earth who can succeed without their employees sharing information. And they will only share information if they trust you, and a much greater chance of trusting you if they feel connected to you through a relationship. And another mentor I had said you need to learn the business for credibility. Though my career has been in human resources, he said the more you learn about the other functions of the business, the more credible you will be as an HR professional. So my advice is people, no matter what your role is in the organization, learn as much about the organization and the other functions as you can. And then one of my favorite mentors said, Jack, surround yourself with great people. And he said, never hire anybody to work directly for you unless you can see yourself working for them one day. If they're not good enough for you to work for them, then they're probably not good enough for them to work for you. He said, but make sure that you surround yourself with great people in the organization. He said, you're only as strong as your weakest link of your direct reports. And one of my great mentors here at Express told me to avoid anonymity at all costs. And this came from a great book by Patrick Lencioni titled 3 Signs of a Miserable Job. He said, Jack, take the time to get to know your employees personally while you're at work. It's not all about work. Take an interest in their personal life. The more interest you take in an employee's personal life, the much greater chance you will have that they will stay with you. Another mentor I want to mention is somebody that I've never met nor had the opportunity to work for. His name is David Cottrell. He's the author of the book Monday Morning Leadership. One of the best little leadership books I've ever had the honor of reading. In fact, I've read it 6 or 7 times. Why? Because each time I read it, I pick up something new. In the book, Mr. Cottrell talks about protecting your integrity as a leader. He said, in fact, as a leader, there's no such thing as a difficult decision you'll ever be faced with, as long as the answer to that decision is the answer that best protects your integrity. He said, for a leader, it takes a lifetime to achieve integrity, but unfortunately, a moment to lose it. And as a leader, once you lose your integrity, you may never get it back. And then I had mentors who I had the honor of them working for me, subordinates. And while they were mentoring up, I had subordinates who taught me to stay out of management land. Because it's so easy once you reach a certain level of leadership, you become somebody different than who you are. And you need to come back to reality and stay connected to your people. And I had mentor subordinates who would pull me out of management land and bring me back into reality. And they would say, Jack, you need to know about this. You need to focus on this. People are talking about this. And they would keep me grounded because of mentoring up. And probably throughout my career, the greatest mentor I've had was my wife, who still teaches me family first. She taught me that no matter what you accomplish, what your goals are, and your achievement, they should come second to your family. And I totally agree. Family first. Organizational leadership success second. Because if you focus on your family, great things will happen all around you. In conclusion, I hope you have found, as I have found, with the top 5 leadership mistakes, it's okay to make mistakes. I have made all 5 of these. Remember, we are not defined by our mistakes. We are defined by who we are after a mistake. And also remember that our employees choose. They choose to support us to success, or they choose to stand back and allow us to fail. We as leaders are in the influencing business. We influence on a daily basis. We choose to influence. And that's what leadership is. It's influencing people to achieve great heights. I appreciate you being with me today and look forward to many, many great opportunities ahead for each one of you in the leadership field.